Hello friends! A while ago I started painting portraits of the characters in our D&D group, and this one that we're going to be looking at today is a Tiefling Warlock named Vetis. I recorded the full painting process of several of these portraits and I thought I'd share those with you and give you some insight into my painting process as well as talk about a new project that I'm working on. So let's jump right into it. I'm working on a Wacom Cintiq 27 HD Touch, and I'm working in Adobe Photoshop. Video is sped up quite heavily. The full painting took about, I think, 6 hours all in all, and this has been cut down to 8 minutes so that you don't lose your concentration. For the character, he wanted his features to be inspired with Daniel Radcliffe, so I was looking at photos of him before and trying to come up with something that kind of had that, I don't know, some of his features, but without making it him. He also had a little demon familiar, which was what I was sketching in a moment ago, and I opted not to do that. So once I've sketched out the character, and the sketch is really rough, I'm not really detailing it out a whole lot. I just start blocking in rough colors. Given that he's a tiefling, he has gray skin and dark hair, and gray eyes. One of the great benefits of working digitally is that you can always paint over and adjust and tweak, and that's something I really utilize in my workflow. There's a lot of little things that still need to be corrected on this piece right now. It's still in a very rough stage, and you'll see as I move along painting on it, I'm gonna go in and correct a lot of those issues. To get more variation in my colors, I use textured brushes. Currently my favorite brushes are Greg Rukowski's from Gumroad. I'm going to put a link in the comments for those if you want to try them out for yourself. He both has a free set and a paid set that has more brushes in it, so yeah, I recommend checking that out. They're really good. My painting process is a lot of push and pull. I'll put down colors, I'll put down lines and whatnot, and then I'll go in and I'll blend it and I'll paint over and I'll smudge it and merge it. When you're working with clients, it's better if you have a detailed sketch to begin with so the client know what they can anticipate from you. But when you're doing your own work, then it's free range, you just kind of have fun with it and explore. And I found throughout the years that I'm just more comfortable working in a mixture of both lines and blobs. It's not necessarily the best way to approach a piece, but it works for me, and I think the more important part is the end result and not so much how you get there. And at the end of the day, it's also just practice. The more time you spend making pieces and looking at how other artists are working and looking at other people's artwork, the more time you spend practicing, then the better your work's gonna get. And it's the same with me. I still have a lot of growing to do. This past year has been one of my best when it comes to developing my artwork, so I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm also really excited to go forward here in 2020 and see what's gonna happen. So you can see right now I actually adjusted his face and I'm tweaking the eyes a little bit and moving stuff in and out, and again, it's that kind of messy process. When it comes to painting hair, try to look at hair as one big shape rather than individual strands. When you're just doing individual strands, it gets kind of that frizzy hay effect, whereas if you look at it as a big mass and you consider how light and shadows are going to affect that mass, you're going to get better results for the hay. For the hair, not for the hay. So now I'm starting to work on the hand. Hands are one of the most difficult things to paint, and that is because there are so many joints and gestures in hands. Also, hands are just as important as a face when it comes to making character expressions. There's so much you can express just with how the hands are posed, and yeah, it's really one of the things, they're hard to paint, but do yourself a favor and study it and study it and study it, and eventually it's not going to be as hard and your artwork is going to be so much better for it. So this portrait is part of a series of portraits that I've been doing for our D&D group, and it's actually turned into a bit of a personal project. It's called Lock the Legend, and it's going to be an illustrated novel for adults, and I've been digging into that over the last half year. I've been doing art for it for longer than that, but I've really been writing and producing a lot for it just over the last 6 months, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I'm so excited to share more about it with you. I've recorded a lot of paintings for it, so there's definitely going to be more videos showing the process of creating that project. It's set in like a dark fantasy world. The main character is a female pit fighter, and yeah, so she's my D&D character. She's a fighter barbarian. And yeah, you'll find out more about her. So right now I'm blocking in the background, starting to work with some light and shadows. And Vetis is a spellcaster. He's a warlock, so he is going to be casting a spell in this piece. I find that the texture brushes are really good for when you're working on stuff like leather, because leather does have that skin texture. Another thing that's really important when you're doing leather is to make color variation. So it's not just brown. You gotta pull in some blues, you gotta pull in some grays, you gotta pull in some orange and some red, and just really kind of mix it up to give it that like a real surface that leather has. Also, leather really easily gets dinged from scratch and takes scratches because it's a soft surface. It's not resistant to scratches so much. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you're doing armors and things like that. So when it comes to light and shadows, I like to go in with an overlay layer for the light, or a hard light layer, which is, it's a setting that you can set in Photoshop and paint on top of the other layers to start adding in light and shadows. For the shadows, I usually use a multiply layer, and it's just a nice way to where you can really kind of block them in. With multiply, it makes it so all the colors underneath that layer gets darkened, and with overlay, they become more saturated, and they also pop more, which is a nice way to paint light. Excuse my cat, he has opinions. So at this stage in the painting process, it's just a lot of rendering. It's just, you know, hunkering down and spending those hours really rendering everything out in detail and making sure everything looks good. Usually my paintings end up at about 100 layers, and that's something I'm frequently asked about. Now, when I say 100 layers, they're not all elements are in separate layers. I often merge up my layers, but I like to save the steps underneath. So I'll have like a lot of layers kind of showing the development of the piece. And it helps a lot when you're kind of going back and forth. If I make mistakes or if I want to try something out, I can just, you know, erase stuff from one layer and I'll have it on the layer underneath, or I'll have the previous step from it on the layer underneath. Right now I'm detailing out his hands, and I'm using photo reference for the hands. I always think it's important to use reference for your artwork. You know, you can't be expected to know how everything looks in your head. It's just, that's not feasible. So don't be shy to use reference. It really improves your work. So we're just about at the end of the piece here. There are a few more tweaks to do. I hope you have enjoyed seeing this process. If you're interested in more detailed written tutorials, I do have a lot of those over on my Patreon. I think there are about 10 or 14 of them now. If you sign up for the $5 tier, you'll get access to those immediately. You also get behind the scenes and a lot of other content, and you can find more about this project that I'm working on if that's something that's interesting to you. Yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be back soon with more stuff, and I'm excited to share more about this new project. Do you play D&D? If so, let me know in the comments. What character do you play? What's your favorite character? What's your favorite class? And I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much to all of my amazing patrons who are supporting my channel. I really appreciate you.